Hello, hello, hello. So, me and SAT Score are back with a very important game announcement. So, World of Warships are doing a massive change to the Armory, and we're going to talk about it today. So, World of Warships implementing in patch 14.6, so coming up in July, is going to be a content rarity in ship rotation. Pretty much what this means is that old premiums or coal ships or steel ships or other ships that have been removed from the game will be rotated back into the game to be bought with whatever respective currency they have been. Along with this, they're also giving a fixed rating for certain rare ships, and they're also making it where there is a fixed payment amount. So, for instance, for steel ships, the for a tier 10, it's now fixed at 31,000 steel for a tier 10. For a tier 9 steel ship, it's at a fixed cost of 21,500, and it's going through all the currencies, research bureaus, steel, coal, doubloons. All of the currencies are getting now a fixed price instead of it being where one ship will cost 225,000 and the other one will be 296,000. They're all going to be in that fixed range. Now, all of this information is going to be posted on a dev blog that I have in the description, so you guys can read over this yourself. But me and SAT Score will be talking about this today and how this will be making some things a lot more expensive and also making some things less expensive. So the first thing that's been going off, which has been getting more expensive, is the tier 10 doubloon ships. They're going to be getting way more expensive, which I technically, as well as, you said the coal ships as well, right? The coal ships.
Yeah, the coal ships are getting very expensive for the most part. Since it's a fixed price of 260k coal, if the vast majority of the tier 10s are actually going up in price. There's literally one or two exceptions, mostly the CVs.
Now, what about the doubloon ships or the other coal ships?
So they actually separate into two categories. The ships for coal is going to be fixed at about 180,000, and then their doubloon price will be 18,000. So actually, it's actually a big change a big win for the tier 9s because they cost significantly less. I find that interesting because, well, to be fair, the tier 9s and tier 10s were pretty close in coal prices currently. But with change, there's going to be a big difference. So if you are planning to get a tier 9 coal ship, you should actually hold off until the changes come in because you're essentially getting a free coupon on top of if you want to apply a coupon.
Yeah, so it's smart to wait to buy a tier 9 coal ship if you're wanting to get one. If you're trying to get a tier 10 coal ship, I advise you getting that before that 14.6 patch hits. Now, as well with these new coal price changes, there's also going to be doubloon price changes. So, like SAT Score said, the tier 9 premiums for doubloons are going to be 18,000. Tier 8s are going to be 11,000. So the price of those did go up on average. So if you're wanting to get a tier 8 premium ship before the patch hits, that'd be definitely advised. Because some ships are getting how high of a doubloon price hike?
There's a huge variance in the tier 8 ships. So it's going to be fixed at 11,000. I think for the most of them, it's actually a notable increase. It's really just the carriers and maybe a few battleships where it's about even or just going down. In any case, someone on the World of Warships Reddit made a spreadsheet of of all the ships that are being changed, and if their value if they're getting more expensive with this change or actually getting cheaper. And we'll also post that link in the description as well, so you can see for yourself which ship you should go get right now and which ships you should wait to buy.
Yep, for sure. Now, although a lot of people are going to either be really happy about this change or really not happy about it. So let us know in the comments down below what you guys think of these changes so far, because me and SAT Store still have a lot to talk about overall with these big Armory changes. Now, overall, one of the biggest things besides the price change is that they're bringing back old premium ships and old like coal ships back that have been taken out of the rotation, right? So people, and they said this rotation is going to be about every 6 months, correct?
Um,
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically, this is going to be like a 6 months change. So they'll be changing the army up about every 6 months. Now, this is going to be really good for players that weren't around during when a lot of the older premiums that people always talk about when they're not around, when they weren't around for that, right? So like Alaska, Massachusetts, like Caesar. There's a lot of old, really strong premiums that people don't have access to and they never have. Oh, like Benham as well, right? And people are like, oh, well, you should just get this ship or you should just gamble for it in the Santa containers. Well, Wargaming is trying to make it where you have a, well, it's still like, I don't know how they're going to do their system with this rotation, but it makes it where you're able to have a chance to get an old ship that is no longer available. Now, it could be a great ship, it could be a bad ship, but they're trying to rotate it around where ships that have been taken out from a long time ago do get rotated back in, and people have the chance to buy it or get it with coal or steel or research bureau or whatever resource the ship was originally for. The price changes we're talking about is for coal, steel ships, research bureau ships, and doubloon ships. The research bureau point ship change was originally, so the original price was for tier 9s was 43,000 through 51,000. Now it's at 43,000 for tier 9 research bureau ships. For tier 10 research bureau ships, it was between 55 and 63, and now it's just at 62. So on average, the research bureau point price has gone up for a lot of those research bureau point ships. So a lot of people that like to do those like to farm the tech tree resets to be able to get those points, you're gonna have to probably do it one extra time for a tier 10 research bureau ship. Coal ships, definitely the tier 10 definitely hit a little bit hard. It's 31,000. A lot of people it's really hard for people to get steel, so that's going to be a little bit harder to get steel ships, but you can of course still use a coupon with them, which is nice. But what are your thoughts so far with this change overall? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Like, what do you think, SAT?
So, given the price changes, the tier 9s, as I said, are pretty much the biggest winners because they, according to the spreadsheet, their coal costs go down by 20%, which is almost the same as a coupon. Of course, the tier 10s are the unfortunate loser since they go up by a notable amount. So it sounds like Wargaming is trying to encourage more players to play at tier 9. But not directly, but kind of like an economic way, not a direct way.
Yeah.
There's also some funny outliers. Many of the older ships like Boyskivitsa and Sims, Loyang, they are all like old ships and they have a pretty cheap doubloon cost. So with this change, since they're getting normalized, their price is going up by a ton. Like go to Boyskivitsa, it's a tier 7. The coal cost actually increased by nearly 50%, which is pretty funny to think about. Oh yeah. Loyang also went up pretty significantly by about 30%. If you ever want if you want either ship, you better go get it right now. But for the most part, it looks like there's a lot. It's mostly green or roughly neutral across the board. So if you still have like a favorite ship, if you have a ship that's not on a red list, I just recommend waiting. And there's not that many ships that are in the red. It's mostly just the tier 10s, which I think Wargaming wants more people to kind of not buy. I'm guessing.
It's because of the fact that for a lot of the players, a lot of people push people to try to get the tier 10s first for coal ships, which Wargaming's been like, hey, maybe you shouldn't get that tier 10 first. Maybe you should get a tier 9 or like where you can farm credits or something, or not just tier 10. It could
And
be what they're trying to
also,
do.
that's one thing. Also, it does make sense to standardize it because the current coal cost is 228,000,
Hmm.
and when you compare that to a 232,000 K Sherman, it's literally a 4K coal difference between a tier 9 and a tier
Yeah,
10.
it's not that much of a
So,
difference.
yeah, so like what's the point?
Yeah, there really isn't. It's better just to get the tier 10 instead of the tier 9. So now it's going to be a massive difference of over 80,000. So that's a very big difference between a tier 9 coal ship and a tier 10. So you have to put in a lot more work to get that tier 10 rather than just getting the tier 9 with the coupon, or both with the coupon.
Uh, Also, they are still selling a couple of rare ships, or epic ships in this case. So you know how the Nustrashimi and the Black are completely overpriced compared to their tier 9 counterparts?
Yeah, I did see that. And the price is
Yeah,
285,000 for each of them. Yeah, that is
so
insanely high.
they're still overpriced, but they're technically cheaper now. Take that as you will.
Yeah, they're still overpriced, but they are slightly cheaper. So if
Yeah,
you want to wait to get them until after that patch, then you'll save maybe like 10,000 coal or so.
yep, 10,000 coal.
I think it's a pretty good deal to save 10k. So if you want the new Sashimi or Black, wait until the July patch to do it.
That being said, these ships are not necessarily better than the other ships at their tier. It's just rated as epic because they used to be much harder to obtain.
Mhm.
And Wargaming wants to keep that and take more of your coal, hard-earned coal, in the process.
Yep. So overall, we can just take from this whole thing that World of Warships is trying to put some kind of rarity level on ships, right? You have common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary, right? They're trying to
Yep.
put labels for how rare the ship is, and then a price to that said label, so that it's easier for players or people that like play people with the game to understand how rare that is, or how normal it is, because they're not just applying this to ships, they're applying this to camos, they're applying it to uh,
Enemy
enemy
destruction
destruction
effect.
effects. There's a lot of things that they're adding this to, so that it's easier for players to understand, oh, hey, this is really rare, this isn't rare, this is common. They're putting some rarity level on these items, which is really nice. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they're doing that, and now they're having a more fixed level of cost rather than just jumping it up and down everywhere. Having a more set cost makes it easier to be like, okay, well, all these ships are all the same cost, right? Which one is worth that particular cost from then on, right? It's not be, oh, well, this one's cheaper. No, it's like this, like, they're all the ships are on an even playing field on being picked, and it's more on which one is just overall better, or which one's overall better at that particular thing, or what you're particularly wanting, and it's not just a price level difference. I do like them making the tier 10 more expensive. It makes it harder to get into because there are a lot of people that will just jump right up to tier 10 with these tier 10 coal ships, and they'll have a really hard time playing, rather than them going to tier 9 and them still having a little bit of trouble, but it's not as rough as tier 10. Because matchmaking has been a little bit nicer at tier 9 lately. It's sometimes a hit or miss, but sometimes really good, sometimes really bad. Kind of depends upon the kind of day, but I feel like they're trying to get the lower populations, lower tiers more populated with this kind of change, but I don't know. That's just a theory of mine. They're just trying to get the lower tiers more populated and easier to get, rather than people just jumping to the tier 10s. Because like SAT score said, originally, there was like, in some of the tier 10 ships were only a 4 or 5k coal price difference in the tier 9, which, oh yeah, I can just save 5k more coal, which is like about 3 or 4 days worth of coal containers to do, which really isn't hard from like getting the daily containers. That's not really that hard. And most people are like, oh, I just wait 5 more days and I can get a tier 10 instead. Right? So
Yep.
I can see where they're coming from in that regard as well. I'm not the happiest with how high the price is going to be for a lot of the tier 8 premiums, because originally they had it where battleships and CVs were normally the higher priced ones, while the cruisers and destroyers were the lower priced. Now everything is the same, so a lot of people would buy DDs or cruisers because of the lower price. Now it's okay, well, whichever one is just better is going to be the whole argument from now on for getting these ships, because 11,000 is a lot for, I think it's a lot for a destroyer or a cruiser, but for a battleship and the CV,
Players also naturally gravitate towards bigger ships like CVs and carriers because they're the ones that everyone fondly loves. Like whenever you hear about the big battles, you don't talk about the destroyers or the cruisers in general. You talk about the big ships. You talk about battleships slinging shells at each other, or carriers sniping each other from over the horizon. So most people, unfortunately, this will hurt cruiser and destroyer sales because they aren't. People tend to play them more for their gameplay more than like the historical aspect. So for newer players, I definitely expect them not to, probably more likely to buy the battleships.
Yep. Well, is there anything else you think we should add about this new big armory change? I know this is going to be a massive change for a lot of the veteran players of the game, and it also will help newer players understand what ships are rare and not rare. So overall, I think this is a great change in that a lot of veteran players will take a little time to get used to, but overall, I think this is a really good change overall. But of course, there's some bad with the change, but there's also a lot of good. So overall, I think it's a good change in the right direction, and I think that they're doing a good job with this change.
Keep in mind, the balancing part, the matchmaking is not affected by this. This rarity change is is mostly a cosmetic thing. So it lets you know, like, hey, that Georgia you got in the Santa crates last year, that is actually an epic ship. I think it's either a rare or epic ship, as opposed to you getting, say, a Wukong. That's probably a rare ship.
Well, in this same dev blog, I'll just say this. They also introduced the Irresistible and William D. Erst. They said they'll be available for Research Bureau points 62,000 and 14.5. The Irresistible will be, and the William will be available for 31,000 steel, coming in the 14.5 patch, which will be later in June. So that's going to be coming up. Other than that, they also did in this dev blog, they talked about container barge improvements, where you can turn off the opening animation and just open container, or open a lot of containers or a certain number of containers, and it's instant, to where it doesn't do that animation opening that a lot of people are get kind of annoyed of. So it just makes it easier to open up containers. In this dev blog, there is also a list of ships that are being temporarily removed from the armory and the premium shop, so you guys can take a look at that as well. There's a lot of ships being removed temporarily. There's also a trade-in event going on in the last 2 weeks of 14.5. There's a lot of changes and a lot of things they're doing in patches 14.5 and 14.6. So definitely take a read of that dev blog. Would greatly appreciate you guys doing that and leaving a comment on what you guys think of this overall, if you like it, if you don't. But I do appreciate you guys taking the time to watch today's video, and let me know what you all think. Is there anything else you want to add, SAT?
Not at this moment. There are good parts and bad parts to this dev blog, so just let us know in the comments what you think.
All right. Also, one final thing. The San Diego and the Leon are being removed from the Armory in patches 14.6, But the San Diego will be returning as a final reward as part of a free event collection in update 14.7, which is in August, while the Leon remains available through the Italian Destroyers collection. So just wanted to add that there. But anyway, that's going to be it for the day. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely leave in the comments down below. This is Overlord Bo and SAT score, and we'll talk to y'all later.